All right, so web scraping. In general, web scraping is a very similar idea to API access. It's basically a way to get data from the internet. And like I mentioned in my introduction to this course, with Web 2.0, we can really envision the entire internet now as a giant database. The websites you see when you go online are really just interfaces that dynamically load content from giant databases. Okay. In cases where the company that holds the data wants you to have access for licensing or specific reasons, they have developed these structured APIs, which we covered last week in class. In all other cases, we can use different tools to gain access to that data anyway by basically shortcutting or using the dynamically loaded website as a way into that database. And it's basically, you can think of it as a way to automate the process of browsing the web. And you might hear these things sometimes referred to as web crawlers or bots. It's the way that Google search works, right? They actually automate processes that go around the whole internet, get information back, and then process it. In the same way that they get information about websites and do textual analysis to see what the website's about, we're going to use these kind of web crawlers to get into a website and take that information out. And just like last week with the API, we have to parse that information to get just the bits we want. In this case, it's going to be a bit harder because we're not dealing with JSON format, like very well structured data that's provided to us by the company. We're going to deal with basically HTML. HTML is, I'll just pull up a website to show you this. HTML is the programming language that the web is based on. It's basically a structured collection of data nested in a tree-like hierarchy, not so much different than JSON, which contains all the information on the website, as well as decorators and specifications for how to visualize that data. If you have any website, you can visualize the HTML structure in any browser by going to view page source. Every browser will have a version of it. This is the data structure behind that website. It's literally the same thing. All these structures, you can see our friends here, the curly braces, the semicolons, the square brackets. In a similar way to JSON, you can restructure this and it will look like a tree kind of nested hierarchy, okay? The only difference between this and this is that most of this information is telling the web browser, in this case Chrome, how to visualize it. So this will be an image, and that image will be referenced within web address, and it'll pop up there visually. This is the way that the web has worked always, right? But in the beginning of the web, this was static. The evolution of Web 2.0 is dynamic websites. Basically, the HTML is still there, but the content is supplied dynamically when the page loads. When the page is loaded, though, it's already static. So what we're going to do is basically use Python. Instead of accessing an API, we're going to get literally this HTML, and we're going to parse it just like we did JSON, looking for specific tags that tell us where specific information is contained. We're going to extract that from the website. The only complication is that it hasn't been structured for the purposes of data collection. It's been structured for the purposes of visualizing on a website. Okay, but we can still access it. It just gets a little bit more tricky. So to get this started, I'm just going to show you a typical structure of like a Web 2.0 web page. And I'm going to use as an example this website called Sofan, which is a real estate website for China. It's what one of our data sets is based on, and it works just like Trulia or any of the other kind of websites. It just has listings and it has the price and area and all this stuff. Okay? So the website is... Let's actually do house. Okay. So this is the website. It's Sofan. This is SC. This is for the Shenzhen site. Fang is Sofan's main address, and then /house. And Sofan has listings for office space as well, which is something you might want to get into. In our case, our data set will be all the listings gathered every week. I've been running this script every Monday for 9 cities that can be considered part of the Pearl River Delta. Shenzhen is one of them, and then 8 others. So when you go to Sofan, it's very similar to a lot of Web 2.0 pages. What you basically see is a structured website, it has at the top a lot of filtering options. So don't worry if you can't read this, you can always Google Translate it. You can sort by price, sort by location, so on and so forth. Once you do have your sort figured out, it will display a listing of results. And this is loaded dynamically every time you load the website. And it will have a certain number of results shown on one page. And on the bottom, you can select different pages. But this is cool, right? Because this is really what Web 2.0 is about. This is why we can start thinking of this as a database, because nobody sat and coded this thing to be here. This is all being pulled dynamically from the database. And because this is the way that the website is pulling this data from the database, we can use this same interface to pull that data, but just automate it to get everything. So if you can think about you yourself clicking through every next button, going down here, clicking next, selecting everything, copying, pasting, selecting just what you want. If you can think about how to do that manually, you can automate it in Python. It's that easy, okay? So conceptually, it's super straightforward. So we have this structure. You can see that everything is sort of has a particular structure, like price is always green on the right side. The name is always a link in blue. This is all structured through HTML, okay? So if we want to flip to the back side or the back end of this, there's two ways to do it. The first way is traditionally you can view the page source, and this exists in every browser. You can see that Chrome has actually tried to structure this. Now you can see this kind of tree-like representation of the HTML. It's still pretty messy. It's nothing like the JSON we're looking at, but you can see that there's a definite structure. There's these tags which contain information, these things. Now Firefox and Chrome in particular, which are kind of developer browsers, they're made for web developers. They have a set of tools which will allow us to actually visualize this structure much easier. And what we need to do is basically understand the structure similarly how we understood the JSON format, so we can drill down into just the areas that we want. All right, and the tool in Chrome, so you go up here to options and go to tools, and you have this developer tools, Control-Shift-I, the shortcut. This will pop up this menu down here. This has all these tools for developers to analyze what's going on the website. All we really need is elements, and elements will give you the source, but it also has this way of collapsing a lot of the tree structure, just like we had for JSON, which will help us get a better kind of view of it or see the structure much better, okay? So that's one way to do it. You can just load up developer tools and scroll through this and try to find stuff you're interested in. If you notice, as I'm hovering over certain elements, it actually highlights in blue that element. So this is a backtop object here, which is this advertisement. You can see how everything is sort of nested in each other. And I'm not going to talk about web development or how HTML works, but just think of it as this kind of tree-like structure where the whole page is the big container and every part of the page is within a container. So if these things are super structured here, like everything follows the same format, every one of those is like a sub-container within this bigger container, which is all of the listings, within the bigger container, which is like this whole portion of it, within the whole container, that's like the whole website. So everything's kind of this nested Russian doll kind of thing, and we just need to get into those structures. Okay, so you can pull it up and try to figure it out based on the highlighting where these things are. So you see here, I found the biggest kind of structure. I can get down in there and look through the smallest parts. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. A shortcut for that is if you highlight any piece of information in Chrome and right-click on it, or you can even just like right-click on whatever part. Down here is Inspect Element. And Inspect Element will load up, if this is closed, it will actually load up this developer tools interface, but it's going to go right into the piece of structure, the smallest piece of structure or container that contains that information. In this case, it's this text here, which is contained in this container. You see there's an arrow, so this is a kind of box where information is. And the P's and the DD and the DL, those are all different types of containers. So like a div is a piece of content, a P is a paragraph of text. You don't need to know that. All you need to know is each time there's a triangle bracket, this is a type of container, so it's a P type, and the class is the name. And those two aspects of that container we're going to use to identify it, okay, in Python. So we're going to basically, if we know our text is here, you can see this is the actual text, right? So if we want the title, we're gonna ask Python to basically find the container, which is the smallest container, of type P with the name title and get all the text from that container, okay? So we can already find any piece of text in the website, but in addition, we can quickly see that if we can find this piece of text, every other container that's like this, that's like a listing or any other piece of information we want, it's the same exact structure. So not only can we find that piece of information, we can easily find all the other titles or anything else that we want in the document. And if we go to this smallest structure, you see all these things are things that are in the listing. If we go one level out, this is all the description. One level out, this is the picture. You see how this is working? One level further out, this is the whole listing. And if we minimize that, we can see all these are exactly the same. And as we scroll down, right, we can see that each one of these DL containers contains one listing, okay? So just like last week where we had this JSON structure and we found that one list that had all the users, and then we looped through those users to get the piece of information we wanted, and we have the same exact thing here, okay? We're gonna find all of the containers that contain all of the listings, and then within each one, we're just gonna go in and surgically get all the piece of information we want. Once we know how to do that, it's the same exact process as last week, okay? Does that make sense to everyone? And you can start with those 5 websites for assignment 2, but you can find any website, Facebook, anything that works like this, and quickly see the structure in action, okay? It's always the same.